Welcome to Mini Mind Hack, where psychology and philosophy meet literature and sociology. Today we explore the strange phenomenon of quantum mysticism and why modern science has become the unlikely vehicle for the return of spirituality. Let's begin with the roots. At the start of the 20th century, physics faced a turning point. For centuries, the universe had been described through the lens of Isaac Newton's mechanics, a world where objects moved in predictable ways, governed by clear and reliable laws. If you knew the position and speed of something, you could, at least in theory, calculate its future with perfect certainty. But then came discoveries that shook this picture to its core. Scientists realized that when you look deep into the very smallest building blocks of nature, atoms, electrons, photons, the rules are nothing like those of everyday life. Instead of certainty, there was probability. Instead of clear paths, there was unpredictability. This new framework became known as quantum mechanics, and it revealed a reality that was far stranger and more mysterious than anyone had imagined. Werner Heisenberg, a German physicist and one of the founders of quantum mechanics, became famous for formulating the uncertainty principle. This principle tells us that we can never know both the exact position and the exact speed of a particle at the same time. The more precisely we measure one, the less precisely we can know the other. And this isn't just a limitation of our tools. It's a fundamental feature of nature itself at the smallest scales. Another physicist, Erwin Schrödinger, tried to illustrate how strange this new picture of reality really is. He imagined a thought experiment with a cat inside a box. The cat's fate depends on the behavior of a single particle that could trigger a deadly device. According to quantum mechanics, that particle can be in a superposition, meaning in several possible states at once. That would make the cat both alive and dead until someone opens the box. Only when we observe it does the cat's state collapse into one definite outcome. Even Albert Einstein, the genius who gave us relativity, resisted this probabilistic view. With his famous line, "God does not play dice," he was saying that he did not believe the universe runs on randomness and probability alone. For him, there had to be deeper hidden laws that determine reality precisely, even if we haven't discovered them yet. These discoveries did not only change physics, they challenged our very worldview. Suddenly, reality seemed indeterminate, observer-dependent, and filled with paradox. For philosophers, mystics, and spiritual seekers, this sounded strangely familiar. In the 1970s, the so-called quantum mysticism movement was born. One influential voice in bringing these ideas to a wider audience was Fritjof Capra, an Austrian-born physicist who later worked and taught in the United States. In 1975, he published The Tao of Physics, a book that became a classic of popular science and philosophy. Capra's background in theoretical physics gave him credibility, but what made his work unique was the way he linked modern science with ancient wisdom. Capra argued that the strange discoveries of quantum physics were not entirely new. In fact, he believed they echoed insights that had been part of Eastern spiritual traditions for centuries. For example, quantum mechanics shows us that particles are not isolated objects, but exist in a web of relationships and probabilities. Capra compared this to Buddhist and Taoist teachings, which emphasize that nothing exists independently and that all phenomena are deeply interconnected. He also pointed out how quantum physics undermines the idea of a solid, predictable world. At the deepest level, matter is not stable and fixed, but dynamic and ever-changing. In Taoism, this resonates with the concept of the Tao, the flow of constant transformation that underlies reality. Similarly, the Buddhist teaching of impermanence mirrors the quantum view that everything is in flux, never static. Capra's book inspired many readers by suggesting that science and spirituality might not be in conflict, but could be describing the same reality from different perspectives. At the same time, many physicists criticized his comparisons as oversimplified or even misleading. Still, the popularity of his work showed a widespread hunger for ways to connect scientific discoveries with questions of meaning and human experience. Another best-selling book in this spirit was Gary Zukav's The Dancing Wu Li Masters, published in 1979. Zukov was not a physicist himself, but an American writer with a gift for making complex ideas accessible to a general audience. His book built on the same theme of connecting quantum theory with deeper, almost mystical insights about reality. The title itself comes from the Chinese term Wu Li, which can mean patterns of organic energy, or my way of physics. Zhukov used it as a playful metaphor to describe quantum mechanics as a kind of cosmic dance, a constantly shifting interplay of energy, probability, and possibility. In his view, particles are not tiny billiard balls following strict mechanical rules, but dynamic participants in a larger choreography of the universe. Zhukov emphasized that quantum theory challenges our ordinary sense of reality. Observers are no longer separate from what they observe. Consciousness itself seems to play a role in how outcomes take shape. This echoed mystical traditions that see mind and matter as inseparable, and reality as something fluid rather than fixed. Like Capra, Zhukov was sometimes criticized for stretching scientific ideas too far into the realm of metaphor. But his poetic language and storytelling helped a wide audience grasp just how radical quantum physics really is. For many readers, his book made the abstract equations of science feel alive, mysterious, and profoundly human. Later, the conversation about quantum physics moved even further into the realm of popular culture through figures like Deepak Chopra. Chopra is an Indian-American physician and writer who became famous in the 1980s and 1990s for blending ideas from modern science with spirituality and alternative medicine. He introduced terms like quantum healing, suggesting that the principles of quantum mechanics could help explain the relationship between mind, body, and health. Chopra argued that just as particles in quantum physics are not fixed objects but exist in fields of possibilities, human beings also exist within a field of consciousness. By changing our awareness through meditation, intention, or belief, we could, in his view, directly influence our physical well-being. To him, quantum physics provided a scientific language for ancient ideas about the power of the mind and the interconnectedness of life. This approach resonated strongly with audiences looking for a bridge between science and spirituality, and it helped make Chopra one of the most recognizable voices in the New Age movement. However, many scientists criticized his use of quantum terminology, saying it misrepresented the actual physics. Despite that criticism, Chopra's ideas became enormously influential, shaping the way millions of people think about healing, consciousness, and the deeper mysteries of existence. From the perspective of sociologists, this was more than pseudoscience. It was a cultural response. In the modern West, traditional religion was losing its authority. The sociologist Max Weber, writing in the early 20th century, observed another great shift, not in physics, but in culture. He argued that the processes of modernization, especially secularization and rationalization, were leading humanity into what he called a disenchanted world. By this, Weber meant that as science and reason advanced, the old sense of mystery, magic, and sacred meaning was being stripped away from everyday life. In earlier times, people saw the world as infused with spirits, divine purposes, and unseen forces. But in a rational, modern society, everything could be explained by calculation, logic, and impersonal laws. For Weber, this disenchantment was a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it gave us clarity, efficiency, and technological progress. On the other, it left many people with a sense of emptiness, as if the universe had lost its soul. The world became predictable, measurable, and in some ways profoundly less meaningful. Yet people's hunger for meaning, transcendence, and mystery never disappeared. Quantum physics, with its strange paradoxes and counterintuitive insights, provided a new symbolic language for spirituality. This is the paradox. Science, which once pushed religion aside, has now become the new channel for mystical imagination. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han, originally from South Korea and now teaching in Germany, has become one of the most influential cultural critics of our time. He writes about how modern life, shaped by digital technology, constant communication, and the pressure to perform, affects our inner world. Han describes today's society as an era of exhaustion and overexposure. We're always connected, always performing, always optimizing ourselves. Instead of being oppressed by external forces as in past centuries, we are driven by an inner compulsion to achieve more, to be more efficient, to never stop. This constant self-pressure, he argues, creates widespread feelings of burnout, fatigue, and emptiness. At the same time, Han notes that people long for deeper, more authentic experiences, for silence, for contemplation, for real connection beyond the endless noise of screens and notifications. In his view, the crisis of our age is not just economic or political, but existential. We are losing touch with the very spaces that allow for rest, reflection, and meaning. Quantum mysticism answers this longing by suggesting that beneath the surface of ordinary life lies a hidden, interconnected reality, a mystery that science itself cannot fully grasp. In popular culture, the idea exploded. Films like What the Bleep Do We Know? From 2004 claimed that quantum theory explains consciousness and even our ability to shape reality. In the wellness industry, meditation, energy healing, and manifestation practices are often justified by references to quantum physics. On social media, you will find phrases like quantum jumping or quantum manifestation, blending scientific terminology with personal transformation. Scientists, of course, criticize this as misuse of physics. And they are right. Quantum mysticism is not physics, but metaphor. Yet sociologically, its popularity tells us something important. In a secular age, people still seek connection to something larger than themselves. The language of science has replaced scripture, and formulas have replaced myths, but the underlying human need remains the same. Quantum mysticism, then, is not about physics at all. It is about us, about our refusal to live in a purely mechanical universe, about our need for wonder, for mystery, and for stories that remind us we belong to something bigger. But before we dismiss quantum mysticism as nothing more than a cultural metaphor, it is worth remembering that some of the earliest quantum physicists themselves reached for language that bordered on the mystical. Take Niels Bohr, one of the founding fathers of quantum theory. Bohr insisted that the strange dual nature of light, behaving both as a particle and a wave, could only be understood through what he called the principle of complementarity. To him, this was not just a technical idea, but almost a philosophical insight. Reality could contain truths that appear contradictory, yet are both valid depending on how we look. He even chose the yin-yang symbol, drawn from Chinese philosophy, for his personal coat of arms, along with the motto, contraria sunt complementa, opposites are complementary. Other physicists, too, struggled with the sheer strangeness of the new theory. Wolfgang Pauli was fascinated by psychology and Jungian archetypes. Werner Heisenberg wrote that the universe revealed through quantum physics reminded him more of Eastern thought than of classical Western science. Even Einstein, though skeptical of quantum indeterminacy, was drawn into deep philosophical debates about chance, causality, and the very nature of reality. Other voices went even further. David Bohm, a later physicist who worked on quantum theory, developed the idea of the implicate order, a hidden underlying wholeness of reality from which the world we observe unfolds. This vision was never widely accepted within mainstream physics, but it resonated with mystical and philosophical traditions that also speak of an unseen unity behind appearances. All of this suggests that the pull toward mystery, symbolism, and even spirituality was not imposed on quantum physics from the outside. It was present from the very beginning, among the very scientists who discovered this new world. So in the end, we've explored two perspectives. On one side, quantum mysticism can be seen as a cultural response, a poetic metaphor for our longing for meaning in a disenchanted world. On the other, echoes of that mystical language were present even among the pioneers of quantum physics themselves. The truth, perhaps, is as uncertain and paradoxical as quantum physics itself. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching. If you found this video interesting, feel free to leave a comment, give it a like, or subscribe. Your feedback really helps me create more content like this. You can also find links to related books and sources in the description and in the comments below. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you next time.